Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast, the weekly Torah portion podcast where I will read the weekly Torah portion and then provide my own commentary on my understanding of the text. As always, I'd like to remind everyone I am not a Torah scholar, just somebody who wished to study the Torah. This week's Torah portion is Mishpatim, landing on the 1st of Adar 1. There's a whole complicated matter there, right? Turns out it's, a leap month? So anyway, Adar 1, the first of them. 5784, February 10th, 2024. Starting with Exodus chapter 21, verse 1, we'll be jumping right in. But before I do, Mishpatim translates to Ordinances, and with that translation, as well as the translation of the text, I find my information there on Chabad.org. So if you want to follow along with this week's reading, please feel free to do so there. All right, let's go ahead and jump on in. First portion, chapter 1, verse 1 of Exodus. And these are the ordinances that you shall set before them. Should you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall work for 6 years, and in the 7th year he shall go out to freedom without charge. If he comes in alone, he shall go out alone. If he is a married man, his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go free, his master shall bring him to the judges, and he shall bring him to the door or to the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. Now if a man sells his daughter as a maidservant, she shall not go free as the slaves go free. If she is displeasing to her master, who did not designate her for himself, then he shall enable her to be redeemed. He shall not rule over her to sell her to another person when he betrays her. And if he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her according to the law of the daughters of Israel. If he takes another wife for himself, he shall not diminish her sustenance, her clothing, or her marital relations. And if he does not do these 3 things for her, she shall go free without charge, without payment of money. One who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. But one who did not stalk him, but God brought it about into his hand, I will make a place for you to which he shall flee. But if a man plots deliberately against his friend to slay him with cunning, even from my altar you shall take him to die. And one who strikes his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. And whoever kidnaps a man and sells him, and he is found in his possession, shall surely be put to death. And one who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. And if men quarrel, and one strikes the other with a stone or with a fist, and he does not die, but is confined to his bed, if he gets up and walks about outside on his support, the assailant shall be cleared. He shall give only payment for his enforced idleness, and he shall provide for his cure. All right, so now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the law here. The very first thing has to do with slaves. So a Hebrew slave, basically, if he is purchased, he's going to work for 6 years, and then go free on the 7th year. And there's not going to be any additional addendum to that. It's just you're free on year number 7. And if you were taken in while having a wife and children, then when you go free, your wife goes with you. But if you are married, let's say, by your owner to a wife, so the wife is given to the slave, and then the children are born, the children and the wife are kept by the master, and he leaves on his own. But this is where the caveat goes. So let's say you're a slave and you have been kept all this time and it's now time for you to go free, but you don't want to leave behind your family. You don't want to stay behind, or you don't want them to stay behind, and you actually like the situation that you're in. You can say, you know what, I want to stay. Then the master can bring him to the judges, and they're going to basically do a little bit of a ceremony in which he will be brought to the door and his ear will be pierced. And so this becomes a lifelong servant. Now moving on, if a man sells his daughter as a maidservant, she'll not go free as the slaves go free. In other words, I think this is kind of interpreted as she's being sold into indentured servitude forever, kind of like as property, right? So unlike the person who comes in, if she is sold by her father, then it's like a permanent transaction. So she does not go free. But if the master who bought her does not like her, and he didn't take her as a wife, she can be allowed to be redeemed. and he shall not rule over her to sell her to another person when he betrays her. So in other words, there's more to it than just, I don't like this one, right? So when the man buys the woman as a maidservant, it's good to think of this as the relationship between Laban giving maidservants to the daughters to go with Jacob, right? So that's basically the same situation. They're supposed to be taken care of. But if the man takes these daughters as a servant and he doesn't basically have her himself as like a wife or a concubine or whatever, and he didn't do that to her, then she can be sold, or she can be redeemed rather. He shall not rule over her to sell her to another person when he betrays her. Look at that key word, is betrays, right? So it's not even that he's giving her up. He's really betraying her, because the relationship, when somebody buys a person like that, and it's under the pretense of, you're basically coming here to be one of my wives, more or less, that seems to be the context. And so he goes through this, and she becomes enslaved or becomes a servant, and he doesn't end up making her into a mother or a wife. That's betrayal. So he is basically, he's betrayed her, and she could be redeemed. He shall not rule over her to sell her to another person. So in other words, he doesn't have the same benefit that the father had selling her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her according to the law of the daughters of Israel. So this is another caveat. She's not to be treated as a slave in that circumstance. If she becomes his daughter-in-law, he now has to deal with her as he would a daughter-in-law, or rather, as he would deal with a daughter. So that is significant. Then if he takes another wife for himself, he shall not diminish her sustenance, her clothing, or her marital relations. So once again, we have to look at this in the context of the man purchases this woman to basically be his as a bride, right? She's going to fulfill that particular role. And we see that with Abraham as well, right? Sarah's maidservant becomes his concubine, and so that's the kind of dynamic here we're seeing. So it says here, he shall not diminish her sustenance, her clothing, or her marital relations, meaning if he takes another wife, he cannot start treating her like she's the second-class wife. She has to maintain the same level of wifehood that she got as a benefit of being married, right? So you don't start ignoring her, don't give her less, don't treat her less. You have to still treat her the same, even if you got a new wife. And if you fail to do that for your wife, the first one, she's free to go without charge. In other words, if you fail to keep these responsibilities and obligations to your woman, she's free. That's it. So it's kind of nice, and it's also, I think in contemporary standards, the notion of buying people is not nice, right? But let's look at it in the context of the era. A woman taken as a maidservant and made into a wife, if she's then disregarded after the fact, when he gets another wife, she's free. And there's a lot of layers to that, but it's interesting to look at it from the context of a slave attaining freedom and doing so because the husband basically failed to live up to his obligations to a slave person. But that's neither here nor there. That's just a side note. Now let's get into the laws we were just talking about relating to violence, right? So if you intentionally strike someone to kill them, then that's death penalty, right? But if it happens by accident, I killed this guy, I didn't mean to, it's just I wasn't going out, manslaughter, then there's going to be somewhere that man can go after he commits the crime of accidentally killing someone. There's a place he can go to be safe, right? But if he intentionally plans it, if it's premeditated, it doesn't matter how it happened, you are put to death, right? So if you intentionally plotted to kill your friend through guile, through some sort of clever way to fix their death to happen, even if you didn't do it yourself, death penalty. Attacking your parents, striking your parents, death penalty. Kidnapping for ransom, or you find the person who's been kidnapped in his possession, death penalty. Cursing your parents, death penalty. Fighting two people, but they have a fight, and one of them beats up the other guy, and now he's not dead, but he's bedridden, right? So he gets hurt. He can't work. So if the guy is injured, doesn't die, then what's going to happen is when he finally gets up and is back to normal, when he's recovered from his injury, there's no death penalty. But the guy who put him in bed, the guy who knocked him out and injured him so that he couldn't work, that guy is required to pay for the lost wages and to pay for his treatment. So we see a good example of a contemporary parallel, right? We have personal injury law, personal injury attorney. Well, this is according to the Torah. Personal injury, if you hurt somebody in a fight, you are responsible for paying for his lost wages, and you're responsible for paying for his health and medical treatment. So there you go. That was a lot of content for just the first portion, so this may be a doozy of a portion. Now let's get into the second portion, chapter 21, verse 20. And should a man strike his manservant or his maidservant with a rod, and that one die under his hand, he shall surely be avenged. But if he survives for a day or for 2 days, he shall not be avenged, because he is his property. And should men quarrel and hit a pregnant woman, and she miscarries, but there is no fatality, he shall surely be punished when the woman's husband makes demands of him, and he shall give restitution according to the judge's orders. But if there is a fatality, you shall give a life for a life. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, a bruise for a bruise. And if a man strikes the eye of his manservant or the eye of his maidservant and destroys it, he shall set him free in return for his eye. And if he knocks out the tooth of his manservant or the tooth of his maidservant, he shall set him free for the return of his tooth. And if a bull gores a man or a woman, and that one dies, the bull shall surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, and the owner of the bull is clear. But if it is a habitually goring bull since yesterday, and the day before yesterday, and its owner had been warned, but he did not guard it, and it puts to death a man or a woman, the bull shall be stoned, and also its owner shall be put to death. Insofar as ransom shall be levied upon him, he shall give the redemption of his soul according to all that is levied upon him. Or if it gores a young boy or a young girl, according to this ordinance shall be done to him. If the bull gores a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give silver in the amount of 30 shekels to his master, and the bull shall be stoned. And if a person opens a pit, or if a person digs a pit and does not cover it, and a bull or donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall pay, he shall return money to its owner, and the dead body shall be his. And if a man's bull strikes his friend's bull and it dies, they shall sell the live bull and divide the money received for it, and they shall also divide the dead body. Or if it was known that it was a habitually goring bull since yesterday and the day before yesterday, and its owner does not watch it, he shall surely pay a bull for a bull, and the dead body shall be his. If a man steals a bull or a lamb and slaughters it or sells it, he shall pay 5 cattle for the bull or 4 sheep for the lamb. Chapter 22, verse 1. If while breaking in the thief is discovered and he is struck and dies, it is as if he has no blood. If the sun shone upon him, it is as if he has blood. He shall surely pay. If he has no money, he shall be sold for his theft. If the stolen article is found in his possession, whether a bull, a donkey, a lamb live, or a lamb live ones, he shall pay twofold. So, that's the end of the second portion. That was quite a lot as well. We're going to break this down again line by line. So, if you strike your maidservant or manservant and they die, he shall surely be avenged, right? So in other words, I assume that means a death penalty. But if he survives for a day or 2, he shall not be avenged because he's his property. So essentially, if it happens in the moment that he kills a guy, that's murder, right? And so there's death penalty for that. But if he ends up surviving for a little while longer, like let's say he gets hurt and then he doesn't die right away, but eventually he dies, because this person is the property of the guy who struck him, there will be no consequences of death, right? So that is the condition, right? If you hit somebody and they don't die for a few days and they're your slave, then you at least don't get put to death when they die if it was a few days later. Should men quarrel and hit a pregnant woman and she miscarries, but there is no fatality, he shall be punished. So basically, what's going to happen is if you cause a miscarriage but don't kill the wife, like let's say the baby, the pregnant woman loses the baby, the husband can make demands of the guy who did it, and they'll take it to the court, and the court will order what the restitution will be. But if someone dies, like if the mother dies, then that guy's going to be put to death for it. So I think this is very interesting on the subject of pro-life and pro-choice, right? So it's very interesting. If there's a fatality, you shall give a life for a life. But if there's a miscarriage and no fatality, so it very clearly defines that the unborn child that was lost in miscarriage does not count as a fatality, whereas if the mother died, that would be a fatality. So I think that's a very significant line. If people were ever looking for kind of the dialogue there on what is the stance on an unborn child relation to, whether it counts as being alive or things like that, I do think this is a very interesting line. This is, again, Exodus chapter 21, verse 22. So that's very, very interesting to me. But anyway, continuing on, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, the Hammurabi's Code situation. So all injuries are to be repaid in full, right? But what's interesting, the difference is Hammurabi's Code, when it talks about an eye for an eye, you literally, if you go blind, if you blind somebody, then you lose your eye. But in the tradition of the Torah, if you cause that damage, it's restitution for that loss, right? So in exchange for losing an eye, let's say is like if a man strikes the eye of his servant and destroys it, he shall set him free in exchange for the eye. Same thing with a tooth. You lose a tooth, you're set free, right? And now we get into the goring bull and the goring ox subject, right? So a goring bull, think of it like this. You have an animal like a bull, okay? It has horns. So if it uses its horns to attack somebody and gores them and they die, then that is now a goring bull. So what happens here is that the bull is going to be put to death. The flesh shall not be eaten, and the owner of the bull is clear of guilt, right? So that's what happens if you're walking in town and you have a bull and your bull kills somebody and it's the first incident that the bull ever had of misbehavior, then the owner is not held liable, but the bull is put to death and they do not get any benefit from it. The flesh shall not be eaten. That's the punishment. Now, the next one, if it is a habitually goring bull since yesterday and the day before you. So in other words, if the bull has shown this behavior of being violent before and the owner knew about it, but did not stop it from going out and hurting people, if he did not guard the bull after being told that it's dangerous and it kills somebody, then not only is the bull going to be killed, but so is the owner, because the owner was told that this could happen. The owner is liable because you were told that your animal could kill somebody and had a behavior that would suggest it would kill, and you didn't put it where it needed to be protected so that it wouldn't do that, right? So you are responsible. In other words, ignorance in the case, it says, and the owner knows. So if you don't know about it, you can't be held responsible. But if you were told that this could happen and you let it happen, death penalty. All right. So next we have, insofar as ransom shall be levied upon him, he shall give the redemption of his soul according to all that is levied upon him. So I think that the specific there, right, he shall be put to death, insofar as ransom shall be levied upon him, he shall give the redemption of his soul. So in other words, it's his soul is the ransom. His life is how he clears his name, right? So because of what he did and it killing a person, the price of his own life is how he pays the debt of killing another person accidentally by not being responsible for his animal. And incidentally, it also mentions that if the animal kills a young boy or a young girl, according to this ordinance shall be done to him. So whether it's an adult or a child, whoever the victim is, the owner of the bull that knew better, is put to the same standard. Now, if a bull gores a manservant or maidservant, he shall give silver in the amount of 30 shekels to his master, and the bull shall be stoned. So if the bull happens to kill a slave, then rather than a death penalty, the bull still dies, and the owner is compensated 30 shekels. Now we have, if a person opens a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an animal falls into it, the owner of the pit shall pay. He shall return money to its owner, and the dead body shall be his. So let's say, you're walking your bull, and it falls into a hole that your neighbor dug. Well, now the owner who dug the hole is responsible to compensate you for your dead animal, and in exchange, the corpse of the animal is now his. So it stays in the pit, basically, and you get compensated for it, and he gets it as property. So it's kind of like him buying the bull for its value. If a man's bull strikes his friend's bull and it dies, they sell the live one, divide the money received, and they shall also divide the corpse. So think of, again, that the animals here are food and other things. So like there's value to be kept in the hide and the meat and all that. So what happens is bull number 1 kills bull number 2, and they have different owners. Then bull number 1 is sold, and the money is split between the two people, and they also split the corpse of the dead bull. Now, a different story is if bull number 1 was already violent, just like before, right? A habitually goring bull. So it's a violent bull that we already knew was violent. Then if you then have the situation where, oh no, my bull just killed somebody and I knew better, then you're going to pay the full price of a new bull to, or give up your bull to the guy whose bull you lost, and the dead body shall be his. So you get the corpse of the bull that your bull killed, and the other guy gets a brand new one. So using modern terminology, because that sounded complex, let's say you're driving a new car that has built-in auto, you can make it drive itself, right? But then you found out, oh no, my auto-driving car sometimes crashes. So you know that, but you still let it drive itself. It ends up crashing into another car. Then what happens is you have to pay for the other guy's new car, and you get the salvaged wreck of the other car. That's how it works. Hopefully that explanation makes it a little more simple than goring bull. So just think of it like a car. You have a car that sometimes goes off the road for no reason, and you know that it has this problem. And so because you knew better, and you let it happen, you have to replace the car that you destroyed with a brand new car, and you get to keep the wreck of the old car. Now, we can continue on. Hopefully we have all there. If a man steals a bull or a lamb and slaughters it or sells it, he shall pay 5 cattle for the bull, 4 sheep for the lamb. So in other words, you're going to be paying 5 times or 4 times the amount of the animal in exchange when you get caught. So next up, we have in the next chapter, this is the first 3. If while breaking in the thief is discovered and he is struck and dies, it is as if he has no blood. This phrasing, remember back in the commandments toward Noah, his laws, right? You shall not spill the blood. You shall not, do not murder. So if a thief is caught in the act and gets killed, well, it doesn't count as normal death. This guy is treated as if he had no blood, so you didn't spill his blood. So next, the second one, if the sun shone upon him, it's as if he has blood. He shall surely pay. If he has no money, he shall be sold for his theft. So if the sun shone upon him, that basically means that the crime that he committed becomes known, then it changes. Now you cannot murder him. If you killed him while he was in the middle of a break-in, that's okay. But if you kill him after it's already said and done and he's been exposed, then now he is somebody that if you killed him would be considered murder. So instead, he's going to have to pay restitutions for his crime. And if he can't afford to, he's going to be sold for his theft. So he'll be basically sold as a slave to pay off the fact that he stole from you. Now, lastly, if the stolen article is found in his possession, whether a bull, a donkey, or a lamb, live ones, he shall pay 2-fold. So if they are living animals, boom, twice the price. Third portion. Man, we got a lot we're covering today in this. All right, chapter 22, verse 4. If a man leads his animals into a field or a vineyard, or lets his animal loose and it eats in another's field, the best of his field or the best of his vineyard he shall pay. If a fire goes forth and finds thorns, and a stack of grain or standing grain or the field become consumed, the one who ignited the fire shall surely pay. If a man gives his neighbor money or articles for safekeeping, and it is stolen from the man's house, if the thief is found, he shall pay 2-fold. If the thief is not found, the homeowner shall approach the judges to swear that he has not laid his hand upon his neighbor's property. For any sinful word, for a bull, for a donkey, for a lamb, for a garment, for any lost article, concerning which he will say that this it is, the pleas of both parties shall come to the judges, and whoever the judges declare guilty shall pay 2-fold to his neighbor. If a man gives a neighbor his donkey, a bull, a lamb, or any animal for safekeeping, and it dies, breaks a limb, or is captured, and no one sees it, the oath of the Lord shall be between the two of them, provided that he did not lay his hand upon his neighbor's property, and its owner shall accept it, and he shall not pay. But if it is stolen from him, he shall pay its owner. If it is torn apart, he shall bring witness for it. For the torn one he shall not pay. And if a person borrows an animal from his neighbor, and it breaks a limb or dies, if its owner is not with him, he shall surely pay. If its owner is with him, he shall not pay. If it is a hired animal, it has come for its hire. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall provide her with a marriage contract as a wife. If her father refuses to give her to him in marriage, he shall weigh out money according to the dowry of the virgins. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. Whoever lies carnally with an animal shall surely be put to death. He who slaughters a sacrifice to the gods shall be destroyed, except to the Lord alone. And you shall not mistreat a stranger, nor shall you oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not oppress any widow or orphan. If you oppress him, beware, for if he cries out to me, I will surely hear his cry. My wrath will be kindled, and I will slay you with the sword, and your wives will be widows, and your children orphans. When you lend money to my people, to the poor person who is with you, you shall not behave toward him as a lender. You shall not impose interest upon him. If you take your neighbor's garment as security, until sunset you shall return it to him. For it is his only covering, it is his garment for his skin. With what shall he lie? And it shall be that if he cries out to me, I will hear, because I am gracious. All right, so that concludes the third portion. Once again, a lot of laws. We're going to go one by one. So if you're walking your animal and your animal starts eating the produce in your... So let's say you're walking your donkey and the donkey starts eating all the good lettuce in the neighbor's yard. You have to go to your own yard and basically give your neighbor the best of your field to compensate for the fact that your animal ate from his field. If you start a fire and it burns something in the neighbor's field, then if you started the fire, you got to pay the fine. You got to pay restitution. If a man gives his neighbor money or articles and it's stolen from the man's house, the thief shall pay twofold if he's found. But if they don't find the thief, then this is going to get escalated to the judges. Then the owner of the original item, so let's say Joe lends John he says, yo, John, can you hold on to this hammer for me? I please hold it for me. I got to go out of town. Okay, sure. So John's got the hammer in his house. Someone comes and steals the hammer from John's house, and Joe comes back. He's like, yo, John, where's my hammer? He's like, someone stole it. I don't know. So then they have to go to the court, and even though it's Joe's hammer, Joe has to swear to the court that he did not go onto John's property and take his own hammer or touch the property. So once they both agree to this, the judges will review the situation, and whoever's guilty shall pay twofold to the neighbor. So basically, this is because there would be, I think, situations where this happened where, hey, will you hold on to this for me? Sure thing. And then suddenly, hey, can I have it back? Yeah. Oh, no, where'd it go? And it turns out that the guy lent it to the guy, like the guy who asked him to protect it for him, stole it back when the guy wasn't looking. So now this is basically him creating a situation where he's like, hey, I stole back my hammer, and now you have to pay me for that hammer, and I get to keep my hammer. So that's why they have to swear that they did not go onto the neighbor's property. It's to make sure that they did not actually cause it to go missing themselves. Hopefully that elaborates on that a bit. So same deal. Let's see. For any sinful word, for a bull, for a donkey, for a lamb, for a garment, for any lost article, concerning which he will say that this is it, the pleas of both parties shall come to the judges, and whoever the judges declare guilty shall pay twofold to his neighbor. So, let's say it says for any sinful word or a series of animals or items, concerning which he will say that this is it, the pleas of both parties shall come to the judge, and the judges will declare, will declare. So basically, that's just elaborating on the thing we just talked about, right? They look at all the facts, and then they make that declaration like, okay, yeah, the guilty party is you. You're going to pay twice the price. Now, and also interestingly, for any sinful word, that's interesting too. Like the fact that it could be like talking bad about something or whatever it is. It could be a secret. Who knows? But in any case, that's how the judges ruled on it. If he asks you to borrow or can you look out for my animal? Yeah, sure. Can you watch my dog for the week? Okay, I'll watch your dog. You go out of town, and then while you're out of town, while your neighbor's at work, the dog dies, or it gets hurt, or it gets captured, or it disappears. Then the two of them the oath of the Lord shall be between the two of them that they didn't do it, right? So we're both going to promise that neither of us took it. And once we know that neither of us caused this to happen, then it's not going to be a situation that he has to repay it. But if it's stolen from him, he shall pay its owner. So that's you're responsible for it in that situation if it's stolen from you. If it's hurt, or whatever, and no one sees it, then you can't be expected to be held accountable. Like, well, I don't know how it happened. I didn't see it happen. And so how can you blame me? And they both are just like, that's just how it is. We don't know how it happened. But if it is stolen from him, then that happened. That's a little different story, right? So now he has to pay back the guy so this is probably like some of the most confusing wording we've had in a long time. So I'm going to once again roll it back and simplify everything I just said. I ask you to watch my pet. You're not looking, I'm not looking. Something happens to the pet, it's nobody's fault. But if it gets stolen from me, then it's my fault. So I have to repay the owner. If the animal is torn apart, he shall bring witness for it. For the torn one, he shall not pay. And if a person borrows an animal from his neighbor and it breaks a limb or dies, if the owner is not with him, he shall surely pay. So this is, yo, man, I need help. Can I borrow your horse to pull my wagon today? Okay. You borrow the horse gets hurt or dies. Well, now I got to pay you for your horse because I broke it. Again, it's like borrowing someone's car and you accidentally crash the car. You're responsible for it. It's pretty straightforward. Now, that being said, if the owner is with you, so he says, hey, man, can I borrow your car? Sure, but I'm going with you. So now you're both in the car and the car crashes. Well, the owner was there, so the owner is partly responsible. That's the logic here with an animal. So can I borrow your horse to help me do some work in the field? Sure thing. I'm going with you because I'm the only one who knows how to talk to that horse. And then the horse dies while it's working for you. Well, I was there, so I'm still not going to be able to get compensation for it. So there you go. Now, if it is a hired animal, that's a different story. It has come for its hire. So that is no longer the same. If an owner is with him, he shall not pay. And if it is a hired animal, it has come for its hire. So in other words, if it was a hired animal, it wasn't borrowed. You've already paid for it. So if it gets hurt, hey, I paid to rent it. It got broken, but I paid to rent it. So I'm safe, right? It's like rental insurance. Anyway, now we get into verse 15. If a man seduces a virgin who's not betrothed and lies with her, he shall provide her with a marriage contract as a wife. So basically, yeah, pretty straightforward. If you take someone's virginity and she's not already married or promised to somebody, then she has to be given a marriage contract. In other words, if you've had sex, you gotta marry her. But the father can say no. So you got to offer her the contract. The father can say, no, I'm not giving you my daughter. You still have to pay the price for a virgin, the dowry of virgins. So in other words, at the time when somebody would get married, there was a dowry for the value of the virgin, right? The value of the daughter. And I talked earlier about a man selling his daughter as a maidservant, blah, blah, blah. But basically the idea is that for families, selling your daughter as a wife to someone else was profitable. But if you take her virginity, she no longer has that value. So whether or not you are given the wife after giving her the marriage contract, you still have to pay it out if you took her virginity because you basically lowered her market value. And she's no longer a virgin, therefore she's no longer able to get sold off as a virgin bride. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. Straightforward. So yeah, if sorceress shall not be allowed to live. Whoever lies carnally with an animal shall be surely put to death. Bestiality is a death penalty. If you make an animal sacrifice to the gods that are not the God of Israel. Death penalty. Do not mistreat a stranger, nor shall you oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Straightforward, right? So if you've got a foreigner who's in your town and he's not one of you, you still got to treat him right because you used to be a stranger too. Don't oppress orphans and widows, because if you do and they cry out to me, I will hear it. So this is God saying, don't you do it, because I'm going to find out. And if I find out, I'm going to make sure that you perish and your children and wife are left without you. When you lend money to my people, right? So you shall not behave toward him as a lender. You shall not impose interest upon him. And if you take his garment as security, until sunset you shall return it to him. So what this means is, let's say the guy, it elaborates here, for it is his only covering. It is his garment for his skin. With what shall he lie? And it shall be that if he cries out to me, I will hear, because I am gracious. So basically, let's say the guy who you just lent some money to is very poor. And at night, it's going to be cold. So if you took his shirt as collateral, at sunset, you got to let him have his shirt back so that he has something to sleep in. The next day, you can keep taking the garment, as like, hey, I'm checking in. Here's my garment for the day. But you have to make sure that he has something to sleep in, because, again, you have to be mindful that a poor person may not have the necessary things to survive. And it's wrong to have them sleeping in the cold because they let you hold on to their item as collateral. So you have to be gracious and merciful, and you have to be that kind of considerate. Now moving on to the fourth portion. Boy, this is like the longest one for explanations we've had in a long time. Chapter 22, verse 27. You shall not curse a judge, neither shall you curse a prince among your people. Your fullness offering and your heave offering you shall not delay. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. So shall you do with your cattle and with your sheep. 7 days it shall be with its mother. On the 8th day you may give it to me. And you shall be a holy people to me, and flesh torn in the field you shall not eat. You shall throw it to the dogs. Chapter 23. You shall not accept a false report. Do not place your hand with a wicked person to be a false witness. You shall not follow the majority for evil, and you shall not respond concerning a lawsuit to follow many to pervert justice. Neither shall you glorify a poor man in his lawsuit. If you come upon your enemy's bull or his stray donkey, you shall surely return it to him. If you see your enemy's donkey lying under its burden, would you refrain from helping him? You shall surely help along with him. So this is very important stuff here. Judges are appointed for a reason. Don't curse them. Same thing with princes among your people. Don't curse them. Those are just the rules. So offerings that you give, don't delay. All right, if you're going to make an offering, you do not delay it. Same thing, the firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. The firstborn son shall be given to the Lord. So shall you do with your cattle and with your sheep. 7 days shall it be with its mother. On the 8th day you may give it to me. So, firstborn of the animals, you can sacrifice it, but not until the 8th day. You shall be holy people to me. Flesh torn in the field you shall not eat. You shall throw it to the dogs. So I assume flesh torn in the field refers to hunting, right? So in other words, hunting, flesh torn in the field refers to hunting. If you are a hunting animal, don't eat it. That's for the dogs. In other words, slaughter that happens through animal husbandry is okay. Hunting animals is not holy. Chapter 23, verse 1. Oh, and before I get into that, remember, we go back, who were the hunters, right? Esau was a hunter. And even, I think, Cain and Abel. I think Cain was a hunter also. But Esau, Jacob's brother, that Isaac favored, was actually a hunter. And so it's interesting to see that hunting is not recognized as, you shouldn't hunt animals. Only domesticated animals should be eaten. So do not accept a false report. Do not place your hand with a wicked person to be a false witness. Basically, if somebody gives you a lie, don't accept it. Like if they tell you, were you at work today? And you know the answer's not true. You know they're not at work. And they say, yes, I was at work. Don't accept it. Don't place your hand with it. So don't lie for the sake of a friend, right? With a wicked person. Like, don't be a false witness. Don't do it. Even if the majority says to do something, don't follow the majority for evil. That's straightforward, right? So even if the crowd says we should kill this man because we want to murder him, that's still evil. So don't do it. Do not respond concerning a lawsuit to follow many to prefer justice. So this is like mob mentality. The court says the man is innocent. The mob says he did it and we want to kill him. Don't do it. If the justice, right, the ruling of the court was that this is the ruling, don't object to the ruling and break the law. That's a perversion of justice. Neither shall you glorify a poor man in his lawsuit. So in other words, this is a case of, somebody commits a crime. I stole some bread. Why'd you steal the bread? Well, I'm poor and I can't afford bread. Okay. Well, you still stole something. So I'm not going to glorify you for being poor. You still committed the crime. Basically, Jean Valjean, Les Miserables, would be not held any less accountable than he was in that musical. Just that's straightforward. Don't say, well, this guy's got he's got a hard life. No, he still broke the law. Now, this is also very interesting. If you come upon your enemy's bull or his stray donkey, return it to him. You would not think that to do this in most cases if you're like, oh man, I hate that guy. He is my enemy. Oh, look, it's his donkey. I'm going to keep it for myself. Screw that guy. No. Torah says you got to return his property to him. Same thing. Is the donkey struggling? Like, is it carrying a bunch of weight and it can't do it? You're supposed to help the donkey. So, one, that's merciful to the animal. Two, it's a matter of humanity and civility. Fifth portion, chapter 23, verse 6. You shall not pervert the judgment of your poor man in his lawsuit. Distance yourself from a false matter, and do not kill a truly innocent person or one who has been declared innocent, for I will not vindicate a guilty person. You shall not accept a bribe, for a bribe will blind the clear-sighted and corrupt words that are right. And you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, since you were strangers in the land of Egypt. 6 years you may sow your land and gather in its produce. But in the 7th year you shall release it and abandon it, for the poor of your people shall eat it, and when they leave over, or what they leave over, the beasts of the field shall eat. So shall you do to your vineyard and to your olive trees. 6 days you may do work. On the 7th day you shall rest, in order that your ox and your donkey shall rest, and your maidservant's son and the stranger shall be refreshed. Concerning all that I have said to you, you shall beware, and the name of the gods of others you shall not mention. It shall not be heard through your mouth. 3 times you shall slaughter sacrifices to me during the year. You shall observe the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, as I have commanded you, at the appointed time of the month of springtime. For then you left Egypt, and they shall not appear before me empty-handed. And the festival of the harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you will sow in the field, and the festival of ingathering, at the departure of the year, when you gather in the products of your labors from the field. 3 times during the year all your males shall appear before the Master, the Lord. You shall not sacrifice the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, and the fat of my festive sacrifice shall not stay overnight until morning. The choicest of the first fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of the Lord your God. You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. Whew! 5th portion concluded. Do not pervert the judgment of your poor man in his lawsuit. So, just like you don't glorify him, also don't abuse him, right? So, if the poor man's in the middle of a lawsuit, don't treat him differently because he's poor. If there's a false matter, so someone's making something up, someone gets falsely accused of a crime, just distance yourself from that entire matter. Don't kill an innocent person or one who's been declared innocent, because I will not vindicate a guilty person. So, in other words, my law and my judgments are correct. So if it says he's innocent, and I would not do that to an innocent person. And if they were guilty, I wouldn't let them get away with it. So don't even think about killing an innocent. And also now you're guilty by doing that, so it's also like a double-edged sword. They're innocent because I found them innocent, so they'd be vindicated, but you would not be. So don't even try it. Bribes blind the clear-sighted and corrupt words that are right. So in other words, when you accept a bribe, you're done for as far as your validity goes. You are no longer right. Your righteousness is corrupted. Do not oppress a stranger. You know the feelings of the stranger. You were strangers in Egypt. There you go. 6 years you may sow the land, gather in its produce. 7th of the year you shall release it and abandon it. The poor of your people shall eat it, and what they leave over, the beasts of the field. So basically for 6 years you can be harvesting and working the land. In the 7th year, let it go, and just let it go naturally. Don't work the field. Just let it naturally do its thing. And whatever comes of it, that's for the poor people and the wild animals. Interestingly, this is really good for the land, from what I understand. Like giving a year off is good for the soil. But anyway, also on the 6 days you work, on the seventh day you rest, so that not only you, but also your animals, your servants, and even the strangers get the chance to be refreshed by taking the day off for the Sabbath. Concerning all that I've said, you shall beware. The name of the gods of others you do not mention. It shall not be heard through your mouth. So in other words, don't even speak the name of other gods. There are a lot of reasons for that. One of them is out of respect for this God. The other one is the possibility of spreading the gospel of another religion. And the third may have to do with the power of words, the power of words to bring life to things. In the beginning, right, the words are what brought creation. So by speaking the word, you bring something into existence in some way. So don't even speak it. So then we go over to the 3 times there will be slaughter sacrifices during the year. A festival of unleavened bread, so Passover, right? So make sure you do Passover and follow it as commanded. Eat unleavened bread for 7 days and do it in the springtime at the appointed time. Festival of the harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you will sow in the field. And I think that's Sukkot. But in any case, and the festival of the ingathering at the departure of the year, when you gather in the products of your labors from the field. So I'm not sure exactly, but I think this is Passover, Sukkot, and another holiday escaping me at the moment. But in any case, that gives you at least some good idea. So with that in mind, we then say 3 times during the year, all your males shall appear. Oh, it must be Shavuot. That must be the other one. It must be Shavuot. I would assume it's Shavuot. But anyway, those would probably be the 3. So 3 times during the year, all your males shall appear before me, the Master of the Lord. Do not sacrifice the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, right? So when you're making a sacrifice, don't do it with leaven. And the fat of my festive sacrifice shall not stay overnight until morning. And also don't leave it overnight. Like make sure it's all taken care of. Lastly, the choicest of the fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of the Lord your God. So only bring the best of the best. Again, think back to Cain and Abel. That's what Abel did. He brought the best of the land, and that was what pleased the Lord the most. And finally, shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. This is the whole mixing milk and meat argument when it comes to kosher. I am very literal in this interpretation. I always have been. I think that the rabbinical interpretation has generally been don't mix milk and meat, period. I take this literally. I take this literally as you have a farm where you have the calf of the mother. It is entirely possible to cook the animal in its own mother's milk, and that is extremely inhumane. So I take it literally. If I go to the store and I have hamburger meat and I also buy a gallon of milk, there's a very, very, very minuscule, almost barely non-zero, if not 0% chance that the animal that I'm eating is related to the animal that's producing milk, because they don't even put them on the same farms, right? So I've been of the belief that it's like literally, you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. So don't have the baby cooked in the mother's milk, literally. The broader interpretation by the rabbis is that this means do not mix milk and meat at all. Surely maybe just because of the tiny % chance that that's possible. But if you're sourcing the milk and the meat yourself, you know where it came from. So I would at least say that much at the very least. So there you have it. 6th portion, chapter 23, verse 20. Behold, I am sending an angel before you to guard you on the way and bring you to a place that I have prepared. Beware of him and obey him. Do not rebel against him, for he will not forgive your transgression. My name is within him. For if you hearken to his voice and do all that I say, I will hate your enemies and oppress your adversaries. For my angel will go before you and bring you to the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I will destroy them. You shall not prostrate yourself before their gods, and you shall not worship them, and you shall not follow their practices, but you shall tear them down, and you shall utterly shatter their monuments. And you shall worship the Lord your God, and he will bless you your food and your drink. And I will remove illness from your midst. So this is a very interesting line, this whole section here. We're now getting out of the law. This is talking about sending an angel before you to guard you on the way. So talking about the Exodus portion, traveling to the land, what's happening here is that an angel is actually going to be paving the way forward for the people of Israel to protect them and also to make the enemies tremble, and they're going to be destroyed. And when you get there, you're not going to do what they do. You're not going to do as the Romans. There's no when in Rome here. You're not going to bow before their gods. You're not going to do what they do. You're not going to worship them. You're going to tear down what they've got and you're going to make sure that only I am worshipped because I am the Lord your God. And also, as you do so, your food and your drink shall be blessed, and I will remove illness from your midst. So I'm going to also make you all healthy. Seventh portion, chapter 23, verse 26. There will be no bereaved or barren woman in your land. I will fill the number of your days. I will send my fear before you, and I will confuse all the people among whom you shall come, and I will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send the Tzirah before you, and it will drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites from before you. And I will drive them away before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate, and the beasts of the field outnumber you. I will drive them out from before you little by little until you have increased and can occupy the land. And I will make your boundary from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the desert to the river, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you shall drive them out from before you. You shall not form a covenant for them or for their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me, that you will worship their gods, which will be a snare for you. Chapter 24, verse 1, And to Moses he said, Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 of the elders of Israel, and prostrate yourselves from afar. And Moses alone shall approach the Lord, but they shall not approach, and the people shall not ascend with him. So Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord, and all the ordinances, and all the people answered in unison, and said, All the words that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord, and he arose early in the morning, and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 monuments for the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent the youths of the children of Israel, and they offered up burnt offerings, and they slaughtered peace offerings to the Lord, bulls. And Moses took half the blood and put it into the basins, and half the blood he cast onto the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read it within the hearing of the people. And they said, All that the Lord spoke we will do, and we will hear. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people. And he said, Behold the blood of the covenant which the Lord has formed with you concerning these words. And Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel ascended. And they perceived the God of Israel, and beneath his feet was like the forming of a sapphire brick, and the appearance for the heavens for clarity. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he did not lay his hand, and they perceived God, and they ate and drank. And the Lord said to Moses, Come to me to the mountain, and remain there, and I will give you the stone tablets, the law and the commandments, which I have written to instruct them. So Moses and Joshua his servant arose, and Moses ascended to the mount of God. And to the elders he said, Wait for us here until we return to you, and Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a case, let him go to them. And Moses went up to the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. And the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days, and he called Moses on the 7th day from within the cloud. And the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire atop the mountain, before the eyes of the children of Israel. And Moses came within the cloud, and he went up to the mountain, and Moses was upon the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Whew. There's your Mishpatim, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's get into the breakdown of the 7th portion. Okay, so basically, they're being promised in simple terms, you're going to have an amazing time. I'm going to make sure that you're safe because there's going to be no barren women, no bereaved women, and I will fill the number of your days. You're going to have great lives. I will send my fear before you, and I will confuse all the people among whom you shall come. So basically, all the people that they're going to go and have to encounter in the land, they're going to be already thrown into disarray because the power of God is going to do that. And also, they're going to be gradually driven out, not all at once, so that, that the land can still be worked in the meantime, and so that the animals won't take over. So they're going to basically stay there and continue to work the land, but gradually be pushed out of it. And then when you build up your numbers, you're going to go in and you're going to clear them out and take the rest of it. This is the boundary from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines and from the desert to the river. So I will deliver the inhabitants into your hands. You shall drive them out from before you. Don't form a covenant for them or for their gods, all right? So do not make a covenant with these people. They shall not dwell amongst you because basically them being there is a danger. It's going to threaten your ability to stay loyal. By them being there with their gods, it's going to cause you to eventually sin. It's going to be described as a snare before you. So don't let them be there and cause you to sin. It's like a trap. Get them out of there. Next up, come to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu. Those are Aaron's 2 sons, and the 70 elders of Israel, and prostrate yourselves from afar. Moses alone is going to come up, though, on Mount Sinai. And once again, Moses says everybody, these are the rules. And all the people say, I do. We accept. All the words the Lord has spoken, we will do. So they accept the deal. And he builds an altar, Moses, and then he sent the youths of the children of Israel. They offered up burnt offerings. They slaughtered peace offerings to the Lord, bulls. Moses took the blood and put it in the basins. Half he cast onto the altar, half in the basins. And he took the book of the covenant and read it within the hearing of the people. Once again, they all said, we agree to the terms and conditions. Moses sprinkles the blood on the people, and he says, behold, the blood of the covenant which the Lord has formed with you concerning these words. In other words, this is a blood pact. With the blood that we are sacrificing with these animals, you hereby do swear to form this covenant with God to honor his Torah. Then Moses, Aaron's sons, and the 70 elders ascend. They perceive the God of Israel beneath his feet, forming of a sapphire brick, and the appearance of the heavens for clarity. Beautiful. This is what they see. The nobles of the children of Israel, he did not lay his hand. They perceived God, and they ate and drank. So, interesting, it says, upon the nobles he did not lay his hand, and they perceived him, and they ate and drank. So, I think it's possibly the nobles referring to these individuals. So he's basically saying, upon these individuals, like, the Lord did not lay his hand upon them. They perceived him and they ate and drank. Or the people back home that weren't there. Could be either or. Either way, they see God. They understand God. The Lord says to Moses, come up to me to the mountain and remain there. Give you the stone tablets, the law, and the commandments. Moses and Joshua, his servant, so Joshua is his right-hand man, they arise, and Moses ascends to the mountain. To the elders, he says, wait for us here until we return. And if you have any issues that you need to bring to the high, normally you'd come to me if there was a problem. I'm not here right now, so come to Aaron and Hur, and they're going to be the ones that you can talk to if you need a Supreme Court ruling, okay? Great. I'll see you guys later. And he goes up to the mountain, and the cloud of the Lord appears over the mountain. And the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. And he called Moses on the 7th day from within the cloud. The appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire atop the mountain before the eyes of the children of Israel. Moses came within the cloud, and he went up to the mountain, and Moses was upon the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So here's this great, crazy cloud of smoke, and then a giant fire on top, and Moses goes right in, and he doesn't come out for 40 days or 40 nights. To be continued. But as a little warning, if you're the people watching this, and you just watched your man Moses disappear into a giant burning mountain, there might be a little bit of doubt and insecurity. Be wary. In any case, that is the conclusion of Mishpatim. Wowza, that was a lot. We don't usually hit an hour in these episodes, but this one's hitting an hour. So in any case, thank you so much for listening. I am winded, but we are at the end of Mishpatim for this week's Torah portion, and we really get into a lot of those critical laws that I think are so prevalent even today. If you want to have a righteous society and you need a blueprint for what to follow, these rules are not so bad. At least, broadly speaking, there's a lot to take from them that can be very useful and used in modern day. If you didn't have a normal court system that was able to use your local law of the land, you at least have a number of precedents that are set for different cases that may come up between people. Now you have Mishpatim to reference. We'll see many more commandments and rules along the way. In any case, that's it for this week's Weekly Parashahcast, this week's Weekly Torah portion. This has been Shmuel Moshe. Thank you for joining me and listening and reading along and studying the Torah with me. I appreciate it and hope that we will continue to do so together. Until next time, this has been Shmuel Moshe. Baruch Hashem.